record on this computer. Welcome to everybody, whether you're here right now or we will see you in the future and you're watching it on YouTube. That's cool too. Tonight, we're going to look at a couple of things, end up kind of finish up with main idea, that whole understanding of that process, and we'll get those emails sent out. But we want to talk about and look at presidential pardoning, which I think is super unique to the US and unique to just politics in general. Can somebody try and potentially define that? Oh, let me let Miss Pina in.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
A pardon if somebody does something wrong, president, the president can uh, say, say that they don't have to face charges, right?
Yeah, so it's a couple of different things. It's either pre-charges or post-charges, but basically the president gets to say, hey, here's a list of people, or here's a group of people that I'm going to pardon them from whatever crime they committed potentially, or a supposed crime they committed. A lot of presidents do that with like members of their cabinet, because to do the job of a president is very difficult to walk the line of legalities with other countries, especially when you're making deals. A lot of times those deals on paper are completely illegal. So I'm going to give you these soldiers and this money, and you're going to stop killing your people. And those are called, it's a fancy phrase, quid pro quos, like you're going to get something if you give me something. And that's actually illegal, but it happens every day. Okay, that's kind of just life. So I want to look at a couple of these little videos, take notes as you go about presidential pardoning. Excuse me. Does anybody know some of the people who were pardoned recently? Recently by president or previous president Donald Trump? Somebody said
Ivanka Trump.
Was she? I know you can't pardon yourself. So
somebody called Baron.
It's Bannon
so
and Kodak Black
Baron,
and
his
Lil
kid.
Wayne.
Somebody said Kodak Black, Lil Wayne.
What about the woman that Kim Kardashian ended up saving?
Yeah,
she was in
did
jail.
that during
and
presidency.
something.
He did that a while ago.
Yeah.
So she got gotten in trouble for some
sort of
cocaine.
Some sort of drug charge, and was like facing almost life for having a very small amount of drugs, which is no bueno, but you don't spend your life in there. So let's look at some of these little quick understanding of presidential pardons. Then we're going to look at main idea. Then we're going to look at what you guys have done thus far on the diagnostic. I know some of you are brand new. You haven't done the diagnostic. I will challenge you to do the diagnostic. I will recommend that you do the diagnostic, because it's going to be make your life easier, and then we can specifically look at different items. So let's look first at some of these presidential pardons. Okay, so let's look at this one. This one was recent.
The new MyDouble is our most holistic.
You can choose any workout you want to fit with your time frame. There are a ton of 0-point foods that I love. I never feel restricted. The new MyWW Plus. Join today for 50% off and 0 down.
The president's power to grant pardons or reprieves is quietly one of the broadest powers granted to the executive in the Constitution. The power has very few limitations. Here are 3. 1, a pardon can only be given for a federal crime. The president has no power to pardon state crimes. 2, the president cannot pardon cases of impeachment. And 3, the president can pardon before prosecution, before trial, but the president can't pardon future crimes.
So yeah, you can't you can't pardon somebody before they committed a crime. Okay.
Correct.
you can only do federal crimes, obviously those state crimes don't, and you cannot pardon cases of you can't pardon yourself from an impeachment, okay? And now he's actually facing for a unique situation, his second impeachment, which is very, very unique.
That haven't been committed yet. Other than that, there are very few limitations on the president's power to either shorten a sentence, that's called commuting it, or he can pardon outright and end the prosecution, the conviction, and the sentence wherever that prisoner is being held. At its core, the pardon power is fundamentally weird. It's the president's ability to completely undo what is usually years of investigation and prosecution by his own Justice Department. Sure, there's a pardon office that reviews requests for pardons and grants a tiny fraction of them, but that's set up just for the president's convenience. He can bypass all of that and issue a tweet that pardons someone. There are plenty of pardons in history that the president has either benefited likely or personally. One of the first presidential pardons was George Washington riding out to pardon members of the Whiskey Rebellion. President Jimmy Carter shortened the sentence of Patricia Hearst, and then later on, Bill Clinton pardoned her outright. Another one of President Clinton's pardons was his own brother, Roger. There wasn't some personal motivation there.
Yeah.
The point is, presidents often benefit politically or personally from the pardons they hand out. President Trump has pardoned controversial Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio.
I stand by my pardon of Sheriff Joe, and I think the people of Arizona who really know him best would agree with me.
He also pardoned another prisoner based on the recommendations of Kim Kardashian.
That's one somebody brought up.
If you're a run-of-the-mill federal defendant, your odds of getting a pardon are minuscule. It's no surprise that the list of people pardoned by presidents includes a lot of influential and wealthy folks. The framers put the pardon power in the Constitution so that the chief executive could reverse any injustice that was done by his prosecutors, even if sometimes it benefits the president.
All right, so that's super unique. Let me go back. Let's look at this one 1 year ago. I want to look at more recent. 3 years ago. You can't self. So let's look at this one, sort of the definition of it.
Stop what you're watching if you've been injured recently in a car or truck accident.
Okay,
Look
I'm
at this
stopping.
check for
Look at that check.
In 2018, President Trump said this.
And yes, I do have an absolute right to pardon myself.
This was in response to Robert Mueller's investigation. You know, the one about Russia. Now, as Trump prepares to leave office, one of his last moves might be to issue pardons to his allies, family members, or himself. So what exactly is a presidential pardon?
I hereby grant you a full pardon.
The pardon comes from the U.S. Constitution, where it lists the powers of the executive branch.
Essentially, presidents have broad authority to pardon any number of crimes.
This is Aaron Blake, senior political reporter.
But there's one thing that constrains that power, and that's that a president can only pardon federal crimes. When it comes to things that either state governments investigate or local officials investigate, those are not under the purview of the president's pardon power.
The power to pardon is absolute, and it's as old as our nation.
The first president was the first one to use the pardon.
This is Gillian Brockel. She writes for the history blog at the Post.
So the Whiskey Rebellion started in 1791 with a tax on whiskey.
Many people protested. More than 150 people were arrested for treason, and 2 were convicted.
Now, later, perhaps because George Washington was embarrassed over the way he reacted, he pardoned the 2 that were convicted and then preemptively pardoned the others.
Let's fast forward to the 20th century, to the most controversial pardon in American history.
I feel that Richard Nixon and his loved ones have suffered enough.
After Richard Nixon resigned, Gerald Ford, his vice president, pardoned him for any legal liabilities he might have stemming from the Watergate affair.
In other words, a preemptive pardon.
We're giving Alice a full pardon. I just told her.
Pardons are supposed to acknowledge that our judicial system is not perfect. President Trump has a few of these under his
That's the one I was talking about.
Pardons have also been used to gain political allies.
President Trump's pardons take things to another level compared to any recent American president. Not only has he pardoned political allies and advisors, we're talking about people like Conrad Black, Dinesh D'Souza, and the president seemed to view these cases as ways to appeal to the more extreme elements of the Republican Party and try and build his base when it comes to re-election.
Biden will never be our president.
You might as well go back to the basement.
Usually, a president will save their controversial pardons for the lame duck portion of their term, because at that point, they don't need approval from voters. President Bill Clinton saved his controversial pardons for his last hours in office. Some even call it Pardongate.
One of them was Patty Hearst. Another was his half-brother, Roger Clinton.
So now, many are speculating on who else Trump will pardon before he leaves office.
And I'm like, the president out the door needs to pardon his whole family and himself because they want this witch hunt to go on in perpetuity. I assume that the power of the pardon is absolute and that he should be able to pardon anybody that he wants to.
Yes and no, Sean. The president can pardon family, but himself?
So basically, there are two arguments against a president pardoning themselves. One is that it would be an inherently corrupt act. Another disagreement has to do with a president can technically grant, which is the word used in the Constitution, themselves a pardon. Some people believe that grant is generally something that you do for somebody else. You can't grant yourself something. And we haven't seen that actually decided in a court of law.
Everyone agrees that Trump has dramatically changed the presidency. In 4 years, he has broken countless norms. Will his final precedent-breaking act
I want to hear like the up-to-date version of it. Let's see what Vox says. Not Fox, Vox. Okay.
So recently, President Trump made an odd comment about the presidential pardon.
The pardons are a very positive thing for a president. I think you see the way I'm using them. And yes, I do have an absolute right to pardon myself, but I'll never have to do it because I didn't do anything wrong.
As bizarre as that may sound, Trump isn't entirely wrong. Since taking office, Donald Trump has pardoned 5 people. The act of pardoning criminals doesn't create many political allies, so presidents usually wait until later in their term to issue pardons. The past 2 presidents only began granting pardons late in their second year. Trump, on the other hand, has already begun to exercise his pardon power. And with several people close to the president being investigated by the special counsel, Trump's pardon power might come in handy.
Some argue that by issuing pardons this early in his presidency, Trump is sending a signal that he is willing to bail out any of his political allies who might be targeted in the future by the Russia investigation.
So what does the US Constitution have to say about the president's power to pardon?
Well, the Constitution provides specifically for the president's pardon power. It says that the president may pardon individual offenses to federal offenses, not necessarily state offenses. And he cannot use the pardon power to avoid impeachment.
But as with most powers bestowed by the US Constitution, the presidential pardon comes with checks and balances.
One of the principles underlying the separation of powers is that no one should be a judge in his own cause. So we have a system of separation of powers. And that separation of powers is one of checks and balances.
The first possible check to Trump's pardoning power could come through the judicial branch.
When presidents take office, they're bound by the Constitution to take the oath of office. And in that oath, they make a promise to
faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
That language of faithful execution, the idea is that this language migrated from private law documents that limited trustees, limited corporate executives, that they couldn't embezzle, right? They couldn't self-deal. They couldn't use their powers to benefit themselves to the detriment of others. A future prosecutor could go into court. Trump would walk in and say, look, I signed the pardon, with the papers that say, look at my signature the way he always does. And the judge says, sorry, that piece of paper is not legally valid because it violated the part of the Constitution that requires faithful execution.
The next check to Trump's pardoning power could come from the legislative branch, from Congress.
There's a clause in the Constitution that basically says Congress has the power to make laws to ensure that the Constitution is followed by all branches of the government.
So the argument is that if Congress has the ability to regulate the means, they cannot take away the pardon power, but they may be able, if it's necessary and proper, to limit, for example, corrupt pardons or illegal pardons that would otherwise be unconstitutional, for example. It's possible, let's say the president pardoned everyone who was white because for racist reasons, for example, that would clearly violate the Constitution. There's almost no way to get that into court. The only response here can actually come from Congress.
The most obvious check to Trump's pardoning power, though, is one that Trump's own legal team has publicly recognized.
The president of the United States pardoning himself would just be unthinkable, and it would lead to probably an immediate impeachment.
Trump can pardon whoever he wants, even if that means shielding his political allies from the Mueller investigation, and even plausibly himself. But he would almost certainly face impeachment hearings in Congress for doing so. And as the Constitution makes clear, that pardoning power cannot be used to shield from impeachment. So in some ways, voters themselves serve as a powerful check against the president's pardoning power. But of course, this all depends on Congress's willingness to move forward with impeachment should the need arise.
Elections are a crucial check because all of the departments are the people's servants, ultimately. I think it's a tremendous political mistake myself for him to have urged that he has the absolute power, because no one in America thinks we have a monarch, whether you love Donald Trump or not.
All right, sweet. So let's let's look at main idea for a little bit. I'm gonna stop sharing. Interesting stuff about pardoning. Some background knowledge, I suppose, right? All right. So let's switch up to topics and main ideas. We'll look at the second half of a video we looked at the other day. So let me share that with you. And then we're going to do some practice. Let's finish up practicing on iexcel.com and look at those diagnostics as well. So if you want to get those notes out.
Guys, welcome to this Memetrics video of our topics and main ideas. A topic is the word or phrase that everything in a text refers back to. See if you can guess the topic of these pictures. The topic is baseball. Now let's look for the topic in a text. Music can be an effective study tool. Some people say that music helps them to relax and to focus better. People listen to music for many other reasons as well. Music has been proven to produce serotonin, one of the so-called happiness hormones. The topic is music. A helpful way to identify the topic is to look for repeated words or phrases. The word music in this case was repeated in each sentence. The word may not be repeated in every sentence, but oftentimes there will be a pronoun that points us back to the topic. For instance, I like to listen to music when I study. Music calms me down. It helps me to focus. The first two sentences identify the topic, music, and the last sentence uses the pronoun it to refer back to the topic. Some paragraphs, however, are not as blatant. Some can be more tricky. Sometimes an author will use different words for the same thing. If you are studying for test day, Memetrics is the best way. This company specializes in preparing study material that help equip you with the knowledge you need and helping prevent test anxiety. Millions of students have used this resource to help them succeed on their exams. The topic is Memetrics. Even though the word is only stated once, the topic is repeated, but a different word is used to refer to the same thing. Once we've found the topic of the paragraph, we can then find the main idea. This may be a helpful way to help you identify the main idea. Topic plus main point about the topic equals main idea. Music can be an effective study tool. Some people say that it helps them to relax and to better focus on what they're learning. Some studies show that many students actually perform better when they listen to artists like Beethoven and Mozart while studying. The topic is music. The main point about the topic, music can be an effective study tool. Notice that topics are expressed as words or phrases, but main ideas are expressed in sentences. Physical activity provides innumerable benefits. Consistent exercise alleviates symptoms of depression. Studies show that consistent exercise results in not only less time to fall asleep and sounder sleep cycles, but also less daytime drowsiness. Additionally, an improved cardiovascular system and increased endorphins stimulate the mind for more creative thoughts to flow. The topic is physical activity. The main idea is physical activity provides innumerable benefits. In many paragraphs, the first sentence states the main idea. When the author states the main idea, it's called an explicit main idea. But the main idea is not always in the first sentence. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's just a leaf. What does that mean? It's autumn. Autumn or fall marks the transition from summer to winter. There are several different ways to recognize this transition without looking at the calendar. For instance, if the leaves start to change colors and fall off, this is a good marker that it is autumn. The temperature in many parts of the world will also start to drop.
Not
In
in
this
Florida.
paragraph, the first sentence is not the main idea. So let's look at the topic. We know that the topic is autumn because it is repeated and everything is referring back to it. Autumn or fall marks the transition from summer to winter is the main idea. This sentence includes the topic and it also makes a main point about the topic. It may seem a little silly that the sentence that states the main idea is called the topic sentence, but that's just the way it is. Always remember to find the main idea, figure out the topic.
Got it. All right, so let's go over to IXL. That's my list of people. I didn't email you guys, right?
No. No.
Good, good. So I stopped doing that. All right, so let's look at diagnostic or log in. And everybody should have the correct login. If you don't, get with me and I'll get that to you. All right, so I need everybody at least when you're starting off, you got to get into the diagnostic area, okay? Arena, excuse me. And you need to, this is the language, this is math. So I want to look at language arts. You're going to look at math and language arts unless you've already passed the math section. So some of you who are in the high school level, definitely I will start recommending that you start taking the GED practice test for sure. If your name is down here, continue using the diagnostic because they don't have enough evidence yet to put your info in there. Okay, so some of you are on there.
Can you check to see if mine's is there? Because I've been working inside the Excel.
And what's your last name?
Singletary.
So Singletary, show more. From what I have right here, it says that I'm encouraging you to enter the diagnostic area. So we potentially could have two. Is this your, I just want to make sure, is this your login and everything? Let me get to it. Should be D Singletary at Pasco CS.
Yes.
Yeah. So once you start getting into that, it'll pop up. All right.
So you said
I've been doing some classes in there.
No, you have to go to the diagnostic section and enter the arena. It's gonna be like a what they call a diagnostic test.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's not just working on the different skill sets. Somebody else had a question?
Yeah, so on that score chart that you had previously brought up with all of us on there,
Yeah.
so that top section, how far along do you need to be where I'd be able to go through and you would recommend taking that test, the pre-test?
Just this is yours, right? I would recommend that you take the English the reasoning through language arts on the GED practice ASAP.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so this is your ELA level and this is your reading level. So higher than 12th grade and like right at 12th grade. Okay.
Cool, thank you.
All righty. And then this is the math. I can go over it with you, but I'm not a math teacher. So you can bring that information to Mr. Butler or Mr. Mosner if you want, depending on who you have. So let's look real quick at, because I want you all to do the diagnostics. So spend some time doing that, please. And then let's look at the learning. Or actually, let's look at analytics for a second, guys. See what you guys have done the last 7 days. All right, so I can look at this week. This week we have, I don't know, it shouldn't. Week by week. So those are some individuals working, kicking some butt, okay? Whether you're working on just math or language arts as well. You can always look up by topic or skill, but I wanna go to learning and then we'll go to, let's go to like, let's look at 7th grade or 8th grade. Let's go to, well, first off, let's go to language arts. So we're going to language arts. We're going to go to 8th grade. You're going to help me read some of these. We're going to get probably the next 5 to 10 minutes determining the main idea of the passage. Okay. So these are good because you're reading and you're getting some background knowledge as well as breaking down the information enough so you can identify the main idea. So let's look. To stand or not to stand. Will you help me? Somebody grab that one and read. I'll try to zoom in a little bit so it looks bigger. How's that? Better? Anyone? I see a lot of volunteers. I see it.
I'll do it.
All right, let's hear it.
In 2016, Vallecito Elementary School in San Rafael, California became the first U.S. school to replace all of its ordinary desks with raised desks that students stand at.
What?
Speaking to a reporter from Time for Kids magazine, I'm sorry. Shh. Shh. I'm sorry.
Okay.
She woke up. All right. It's ordinary desks with raised desks the students stand at. Speaking, a reporter from Time for Kids magazine, one student at the school gave the standing desks high praise. You feel happier, you're less tired, and you're more active, she said. According to several studies, children working at standing desks burn more calories and are more focused on tasks. However, some teachers and parents are opposed to the change. They are concerned that standing for long periods of time could cause fatigue, strain on the legs and feet, or posture problems. In addition, standing desks are more expensive than seated desks. Only time will tell whether standing desks will improve to be the next big trend or failed experiment, sorry.
Yeah, so let's look at the main idea here. One's probably going to be either too broad or too specific, and the other one's going to be absolutely perfect. So some people say that standing desks promote good study habits, but others are weary of the new desks. Studies have shown that standing desks help students focus on their schoolwork while being more active. Which one do you think is the main idea? Somebody, what'd you say?
The first one.
So it's going to actually be A. B is too specific. It is only talked about this right here. That's that section right there. Okay. It's true, but there is a whole section that has, I kind of think of like the positive part of this paragraph is talking about how good the desks are and how people like them or the students like them. And then the second part is some people saying they might get fatigued, strain on the feet, things like that. So this is a really good wrap up of the whole entire passage because it has that but in there, but others are weary of the new desk. So I think that's very interesting. I have a secretary here at the school and they installed a standing desk. So part of the day is standing and part is not. I don't know how I would feel about that. Although I I feel like sometimes sitting too long is ridiculous too, but I'm always up. We also have some of the tech students that are up and down as well, depending on what their day looks like. So I don't know, kind of up in the air. You got it. All right, so naming Pluto. Who wants to hit this one up? Don't everybody volunteer at once.
I'll read it.
All right, let's hear it.
When Planet X was discovered in 1930, astronomers began debating what to call it. An 11-year-old girl named Benita Burney suggested the name Pluto to her grandfather, who passed the idea along to a friend who was a professor of astronomy. The professor, in turn, immediately forwarded the suggestion to scientists at the Lowell Observatory, where the planet had been discovered. The astronomers appreciated the fact that Pluto was the ancient Romans' name for the god of the underworld, making it a fitting moniker for such a cold and distant celestial body. In addition, its first two letters matched the initials of Percival Lowell, the astronomer who first proposed the existence of Planet X. The matter was eventually put to a vote, with Pluto the hands-down winner.
And now we can't decide from week to week if it's a true planet or not. Isn't that funny? All right, so after an 11-year-old suggested Pluto, astronomers chose it as the name of a newly discovered planet. Pluto is a good name for a cold, distant planet because it's the name of a Roman god of the underworld. Which one is a better breakdown of all the information?
Second one?
I think the second one is really super specific. Okay, because they're talking about the name over and over again. Naming. Okay, so I think this one is it.
The first one, yeah, that's it.
Let's see what we got. Awesome possum, cool. All right. All right, anybody want to hit this one up?
I'll go ahead.
All
My
right,
microphone wasn't working just now.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so the first newspaper war. The Crimean War, that's how you pronounce it, the Crimean War Crimean War was fought in the 1850s between Russia on the side and Britain, France, and Turkey on the other. Although it was a major conflict, it is perhaps best remembered as the first war in which journalists were present on the battlefield. News dispatches from William Howard Russell, a reporter for the Times of London, exposed military blunders and revealed the filthy conditions that existed in military hospitals and camps. Photographers such as James Robertson and Roger Fenton made hundreds of photographs of soldiers on the battlefield. These news reports and photographs provided an uncensored look at the life on the front lines. The Crimean War marked the first time in history that people back home were exposed to the horrors of war.
All right. Looking at the main idea, the Crimean War was fought between Russians and the British, French, and Turkish, or the Crimean War was the first war to be documented for civilians.
First war to be documented.
Yeah, I think that's a really good. We're talking about how it's documented throughout the whole passage there. Okay, let's see. Super duper, really awesome. So again, you want your SMART score to be about 80 to 90. Okay, so once you get to main idea in the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and you kill it, you're going to move on to the next particular section if you want. And you'll be able to find that in suggested sections from the diagnostic area. So let me stop sharing. And if you have any questions, comments, awesome. If not, I will spend the next 7 minutes in prayer for you that you get through the math class as well. I always make fun of the math teachers, I have to admit.
Now, what grade level do you start at?
I didn't hear the last.
What grade level do you suggest? I'm sorry.
do I suggest for what?
When we're doing IXL, like for reading,
I would-
do you suggest to start at 8th grade?
I would start even lower. I start third to third grade to fifth, and get the concept that you're doing. And if that's too easy, move up to the middle school grades. And then if that's too easy, you start getting 5, 6, 7 in a row correct. You might want to move up more difficult to 9 through 12. Okay.
Mhm.
So you don't have to get a 90 on like the third grade if it's way too easy. Move up. We want you, because every person's gonna be different. We want it to be start out easy, but then be we want to have movement, so we want some challenges. Okay. All righty.
Yeah.
Questions, comments? All right, 6 minutes, and then you have to see Mr. Mr. Butler or Mr. Mosner, depending on who you have. Okay.
So I took the practice test, social studies, and it says that I'm likely to pass,
Okay.
but I think when I was running out of time, I just started clicking the C's, but it said I was in the 150s. So I was just
Good.
wondering if I should like take some more practice. I
Yeah,
want to take some more practice.
That's really good test taking strategy. If you don't finish and you have 5 or 6 left, pick a letter, A, B, or C, or D, and just go through it down the line. That's a good test taking strategy. That's obviously, if you have 15 minutes left, don't do that. But if you have 30 seconds left, it is smarter to put something down. This isn't the SAT where you get points for just not answering if you don't know, or partial points. You don't get anything if you don't answer it. Okay. So at least if you put something down, you have something. Okay.
Okay.
All right, my friends.
All right.
I'm going to call it.
Have a good night. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Have a good weekend. Let me know if you need anything. I'm here all night. All right.
All right, good night.
All right. Bye-bye.